At dinner, my daughter looked me in the eye and said, "You're just another mouth to feed. I can't keep wasting money on your meds." No one stood up for me. By Monday, I had sold my house and everything I owned. I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end and comment below with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches. I never imagined my own daughter would see me as a burden, just a drain on her wallet. But there I was, sitting at her dinner table, in the home she shared with her husband, when those words sliced through me like a blade. "You're just another mouth to feed, Mom. I can't keep paying for your medications." The room went quiet. Her husband, Trevor, suddenly found his mashed potatoes incredibly fascinating. My grandson, Kyle, kept his eyes glued to his phone. No one said a word. No one came to my defense. I sat there, hands trembling slightly, and slowly set my fork down. At 67, I never thought I'd be living with my daughter. After my mild stroke 2 years ago, she'd insisted I move in. "It's safer this way," she'd told me. "We'll take care of you." But now I saw the truth. What she really meant was, "We'll take control of you." "Isla," I finally managed to say, my voice barely audible, "I do contribute to this home. Your social security barely covers your medication," she cut in, waving her hand as if I were wasting her time. "Do you even know how expensive it is? The special diet your doctor wants you on? We're drowning, Mom." Trevor cleared his throat. "Maybe this isn't the time," he mumbled, glancing between us. But Isla raised her voice. "No, we need to talk about it now. Kyle needs braces. The roof is leaking. We've put off so much, because we're spending on you." I turned to Kyle, hoping for some spark of empathy. He stood up and left the table without a word. That silence, that lack of care, hurt more than anything I'd ever felt. "I never asked to be a burden," I whispered. "Well, you are," Isla snapped, then paused, realizing what she'd said. Her voice softened. "I'm just under a lot of pressure, Mom. You know I love having you here." But I knew. I had heard the truth. Seen it in her face. To her, I wasn't a person. I was a cost. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling in the tiny guest room that was now mine. And I thought of the home I once had. The 3-bedroom house where I'd raised Isla alone after her father died. The house that now sat empty because Isla had convinced me it was too much to handle. "It's too big for you, Mom." But by morning, I'd made a decision. I got dressed with care. My good blue dress. The pearl earrings my late husband gave me on our 20th anniversary. I did my makeup slowly, deliberately. I wanted to look like the woman I am. Not the dependent she saw. "Why are you all dressed up?" Isla asked at breakfast, her tone wary. "I have an appointment," I answered, calm. "With who? Your doctor?" I don't remember booking anything. There it was again. The assumption that I couldn't make my own choices. That she had to manage every part of my life. "Not a doctor," I said. "A real estate agent." She froze mid-sip. "A what?" "I'm selling my house." My voice was steadier than it had been in months. "But we already talked about this," she protested. "You can't live alone." "I know," I said, picking up my purse. "But I also know I don't need to hang on to an empty house, especially when I'm such a financial burden to you." Her cheeks turned red. "Mom, about last night." "I didn't mean it." "You did," I said gently. "And it's okay. You have your own family now." "I understand." She hesitated. "We were actually thinking, maybe Kyle could use the house for college. It's so close to the university." And then I understood. That was the plan all along. Keep Mom tucked away in the spare room. Wait it out. And eventually pass the house down. I've already made the appointment. "It's at 10, I said, walking to the door. Behind me, I heard her scrambling for her phone, calling Trevor. I knew she'd try to stop me. But for the first time in 2 years, I felt like I had a say again. In the cab, I felt something lift off my chest. At the real estate office, a kind woman named Patricia welcomed me. She showed me the current value of my home. When I saw the number, my breath caught. The neighborhood had grown in value. That house, my house, that I'd lovingly cared for decades. The same one Isla thought would make a perfect crash pad for Kyle, was worth far more than I'd ever realized. "Mrs. Wilson, are you okay?" Patricia asked, seeing my reaction. I smiled. A real smile. "Yes," I said. "I think I really am." By the time I got back to Isla's house, there were 17 missed calls on my phone. The second I walked in, I felt the storm building. Trevor was pacing. Isla rushed up to me, her face flushed with panic and frustration. "What were you thinking? You can't just make major decisions like this without talking to us first," she said, her voice sharp. I placed my purse on the table with calm, deliberate hands. "I don't need anyone's permission to sell property that belongs to me, Isla." "But Mom, you're not." She stopped herself. But I knew exactly what she was about to say. "Not capable. Not of sound mind. Not smart enough to handle your own business." "Not what?" I asked, my voice low but steady. Trevor, always the peacekeeper, jumped in. "Norma, we're just worried. It's a big decision, and with your health." "My health is fine," I cut in. "The stroke was 2 years ago. I take my meds, I exercise, and my mind is as clear as ever." "That's not the point," Isla snapped, throwing her arms up. "We're a family. We make decisions together. That house has been in the family for decades. You can't just decide to sell it because your feelings got bruised at dinner." "My feelings hurt?" Like I was some petulant child denied dessert. "Patricia, my real estate agent, told me the house could go for nearly double what we expected," I said, redirecting the conversation. "Turns out the neighborhood's become quite popular." I saw the exchange between Isla and Trevor, a quick glance, almost imperceptible. Surprise. Then, calculation. And finally, interest. That's good, Mom," Isla said, her voice softening. "All the more reason to think this through. Maybe renting it out would be smarter. That way, you'd still have income but keep the property." I shook my head. My mind's made up. That night, lying in bed, the memories came rushing in. I remembered the day Harold and I bought that little house, how proud we were of our tiny starter home with the small backyard where Isla would later take her first steps. When Harold died of a heart attack, Isla was just 8. Somehow, I managed to keep that house, working 2 jobs, pinching pennies. I remembered skipping meals so she could have new school clothes, delaying roof repairs so she could keep dancing, and shelving my dream of going back to school so she could go to the college of her choice. Everything I had went into raising her. Into making sure she never felt the hole her father left. When did I stop being her mother? And become just a bill she had to pay? The next morning, I was up early. I made a pot of coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my notebook, doing math and making lists. Social Security wouldn't cover everything, but with the house money, I could live just fine. Trevor walked in, surprising me. "You're up early," he said, pouring coffee before sitting across from me. His face was serious. "Isla's really upset, you know." "I know," I replied, closing my notebook. He sighed. "Look, Norma, I get it. What she said wasn't fair. But she's under a ton of pressure, the mortgage, Kyle's college, my job isn't what it used to be." "I know what pressure feels like," I said quietly. "I raised her on a teacher's aide salary after her father died. I never once complained about how much it cost." He looked down, ashamed. "We were kind of counting on that house, Norma." And there it was. The truth. Counting on it for what? I asked, though I already knew. He stared into his mug. We've had some financial issues. We thought we could maybe use the equity, just until things level out. Isla didn't want to burden you with it. No, I said. She just wanted control. While treating me like a guest in her own plan. I'm really sorry, he said. So am I replied. But I have to look out for myself now. Later that day, I had a checkup with Dr. Reynolds. While she took my blood pressure, I finally asked something that had been bothering me. Are my prescriptions really as expensive as my daughter says? She claims they're breaking the bank. Dr. Reynolds furrowed her brow. Your prescriptions are all generics, Mrs. Wilson. With your Medicare coverage, they shouldn't run more than $30 a month total. A chill ran down my spine. $30. That was the huge financial burden Isla had been so upset about? Is something wrong? Dr. Reynolds asked, noticing the shift in my face. Just seeing things clearly, I said. Back at the house, I went to check my medications. Isla kept them in a kitchen cabinet, so I can manage your refills, she'd insisted. But as I looked closer, something didn't feel right. Some bottles had handwritten labels. Instructions scribbled in marker. Generic containers, not pharmacy issued. I called the pharmacy, pretending to inquire about a refill. When I gave them my name, the pharmacist confirmed my hunch. Isla had been picking up my meds all along. They were covered. Copay? Minimal. So where was the $200 I gave her every month going? That money was meant for groceries and my prescriptions. I felt sick. That evening, I sat outside watching the sun go down when Kyle came and joined me. 16 years old, caught between childhood and manhood. Usually glued to his phone. Are you really selling your house, Grandma? He asked. Yes, sweetheart. I am. He nodded slowly, pulling at a thread on his jeans. Mom's really mad. I heard her and Dad fighting about it last night. I'm sorry you had to hear that. It's not your fault, he shrugged. She's always stressed about money. Even though Dad makes good money. They just bought a new SUV last month. A new SUV. That had never come up. Kyle, honey. I said gently. Have your parents ever talked about my house? What they might do with it? He looked uncomfortable, but nodded. Yeah, kinda. Mom said when the house is hers, they'd sell it and use the money to get a cabin by the lake. She's been looking at listings for a while. My heart sank. So that was the plan. Wait me out. Take the house. And trade my life's work for a vacation home. As Kyle stood and went inside, I knew something with absolute clarity. This wasn't just about reclaiming independence. It was about protecting myself from the people who should have protected me. The next morning, Patricia, my real estate agent, called with news. 3 interested buyers already. The market was hot. My little mid-century home, kept spotless for decades, was now a hot commodity. As I hung up the phone, I noticed Isla standing in the hallway. Her face was unreadable. So you're really going through with this? Yes. Yes, I was. It wasn't a question, she said. Yes, I answered simply. I am. The morning after my conversation with Kyle, I woke to shouting downstairs. I recognized Isla's voice immediately, sharp, brittle with anger. I dressed quickly and moved toward the hallway, stopping just short of the stairs. How could you let this happen? Isla snapped at Trevor. You were supposed to be managing her finances. I tried, Isla, he said, his voice tight. But your mother isn't incapable. She has every legal right to sell what belongs to her. We had plans for that money. Isla's voice cracked. The lake house, Kyle's college, our retirement, it was all part of the plan. Your plan, Trevor interrupted. That's her house, Isla. Not ours. We never should have banked on it. Their voices softened after that, too low to make out clearly. I stood there in the hallway, numb. They'd been counting on my home, my asset, as if it already belonged to them. I returned to my room and sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process what I'd just heard. My own daughter. Waiting for her opportunity to claim the one thing I still had. The one thing that could ensure I remained independent. And all the while, she treated me like a burden in her home. Later that morning, I was in the kitchen sipping tea when Isla walked in. Her smile was tight, her eyes red and swollen. "Mom, we really need to have a serious talk about the house." I set my cup down. "What about it?" She sat across from me, her tone falsely sweet. "I've been looking into some things. After your stroke, there are questions about whether you're truly able to make such big financial decisions." My chest tightened. "What exactly are you saying, Isla?" "I think we might need to explore a guardianship arrangement," she said, her voice soft, but her eyes cold and resolute. "It's just to keep you from making a rash decision you might regret." The message was clear. If I didn't abandon my plans to sell, she would try to have me declared mentally unfit. I met her gaze, steady. "I had a minor stroke 2 years ago. Dr. Reynolds has said again and again that my cognitive health is stable. Cognitive decline can be subtle, Mom. You might not even realize." "Stop," I said, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. "I know exactly what you're trying to do. And it won't work." Her expression shifted from concern to cold resentment. "I'm trying to protect you." "No," I said quietly. "You're trying to protect your inheritance." Whatever pretense she had left fell away. "Do you have any idea what we've given up to take care of you? The trips we've delayed? The home improvements we've skipped? And now, you want to sell the one thing that could make it all worthwhile?" "I never asked you to give anything up for me," I replied calmly. "In fact, Kyle mentioned the new SUV you and Trevor just bought. Doesn't sound like a family tightening their belts." Her cheeks flushed. "That's different. We needed a dependable car. And I need peace of mind for the years I have left." She stood up abruptly. "Fine. Sell the house. But don't expect any help from us when you burn through that money." She stormed off, leaving me at the table, hands trembling. I needed help. Someone who understood what I was facing, someone who could guide me through this. I thought of Judith. An old friend and retired attorney. We'd lost touch after I moved in with Isla, who always said Judith was a bad influence, too supportive of my independence. Now I knew why. I found Judith's number in my old address book and called from the landline while Isla was out. "Norma?" Judith answered, her voice warm and surprised. "It's been ages. How are you?" "I need your help," I said, my voice cracking. "It's Isla. She's trying to take control of my finances. She's talking about guardianship to stop me from selling my home." Judith's tone shifted immediately. "Tell me everything." And I did. The dinner. The truth about my medications. The conversation I overheard that morning. And Isla's thinly veiled threat. Judith listened quietly, making soft, worried noises now and then. When I finished, she said calmly but firmly, "Norma, this is elder financial abuse. And emotional abuse. You need to act now." "But how? What if she files?" "Then we make sure she loses. First, get a cognitive evaluation from your doctor, written. Second, gather all your important documents. Can you leave the house tomorrow for a few hours?" "Yes," I said. We made a plan to meet at her home. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. I wasn't alone. That evening, as I helped Kyle with his history homework, he asked something that caught me off guard. "Grandma, are you and Mom fighting because of the money?" I looked up, surprised. "What money, sweetheart?" He fidgeted with his pencil. "I heard Mom telling Dad that you get almost $3,000 a month from Social Security and Grandpa's pension. But you only give them $1,200. A cold chill crept up my spine. That's true, I said quietly. The rest goes into my savings. Kyle nodded slowly. Mom says that's selfish. She says they do everything for you. He paused, then added in a rush. But I don't really think they do. You cook dinner most nights. You do your own laundry. And you usually drive yourself to your doctor appointments. I reached out and gently took his hand. Thank you for telling me that, Kyle. Are you mad at Mom? He asked softly. I'm not angry, I said after a moment. Just heartbroken. That she sees me as a burden, instead of as her mother. Kyle looked conflicted. She says if you sell your house, you'll waste the money and come running back when it's all gone. Indignation flared inside me. I raised your mother alone after your grandfather died. I put her through college. I've never been reckless with money. I know, Kyle said simply. Dad said the same thing. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Isla's threat, guardianship, and asking myself how my sweet little girl had become someone willing to manipulate her own mother for money. Had I spoiled her too much? Had I failed to teach her empathy? The next morning, I slipped out early to meet Judith. She lived in a tasteful little condo downtown, and when she opened the door, I nearly cried. Her face had more lines than I remembered, but her eyes were still bright and kind. Oh, Norma, she said, pulling me into a hug. We're going to fix this. I promise. She already had coffee brewing and a notepad waiting. Over the next 2 hours, we created a plan, one that would protect both my money and my autonomy. Judith had called in a favor from a colleague who specialized in elder law. She'd also contacted Dr. Reynolds, who agreed to conduct a formal evaluation of my cognitive health. The most important thing, Judith said, is to move fast, before Isla has a chance to file for guardianship. Once you have the proceeds from the house, we'll make sure the money is protected in a way she can't touch. When I left Judith's place, I felt two things at once, strength and sorrow. I had a way forward now. But I'd also lost something I never thought I'd question, the belief that my daughter loved me unconditionally. Family was supposed to be a sanctuary, not a source of betrayal. As I stepped out into the street, my phone buzzed. A text from Isla. Where are you? We need to talk. I took a deep breath and started the walk back to a house that no longer felt like home. When I arrived, I saw Trevor's car in the driveway, alongside a sleek black sedan I didn't recognize. My stomach twisted. I let myself in quietly. Voices drifted from the dining room, Isla's tense, insistent, and a man's, smooth and professional. I stepped into the doorway and froze. Isla and Trevor were seated at the table with a man in a charcoal suit flipping through a folder of documents. They all looked up when they saw me. There you are, Isla said, her smile brittle and rehearsed. Mom, this is Mr. Donovan. He's a family lawyer who works in elder care. The puzzle pieces slid into place. She hadn't wasted a moment. I see, I said, calmly setting my purse on the sideboard. And why is an elder care attorney sitting in my daughter's dining room? Mr. Donovan stood and offered his hand. Mrs. Wilson, your daughter is concerned about some recent financial decisions. She asked me to discuss ways to ensure your long-term security. I didn't take his hand. My long-term security is exactly what I'm trying to protect by selling my house, Mr. Donovan. Isla quickly cut in. Mom's had some issues since her stroke. She gets confused. Forgets things. Especially when it comes to money. The lie was so bold, so premeditated, that I was momentarily speechless. Trevor looked away, clearly ashamed. That's not true, I said at last, my voice firmer than I expected. My stroke was mild and happened over 2 years ago. My neurologist has repeatedly confirmed that I'm mentally sound. Mr. Donovan looked between us, clearly realizing he'd walked into a far messier situation than he'd been briefed on. Perhaps we should revisit this another time, when things are less emotional, he said, starting to gather his papers. There's no need, I replied. I'm not going to discuss my finances with you now, or ever, Mr. Donovan. Isla stood, clearly flustered. Mom, please. You're being irrational. We're trying to help you. By claiming I'm not competent? By lying to a legal professional? Mr. Donovan cleared his throat. Mrs. Wilson, would you consider taking a cognitive exam? Just to clarify any misunderstandings? Already scheduled, I said. Dr. Reynolds will be providing a formal assessment. The results will be sent to my attorney. Isla's head snapped up. Your attorney? Since when do you have a lawyer? Since I realized I needed protection from my own daughter. The silence was suffocating. The words hung there, thick and final. Trevor rose, quietly walking Mr. Donovan to the door, murmuring apologies. When he returned, his expression was bleak. That was humiliating, he said to Isla. You told me this was about estate planning. Not guardianship. What was I supposed to do? Isla snapped. She's about to throw away everything we've worked for. It was never yours to begin with, I said softly. It never belonged to you. Isla turned to me, eyes brimming. How can you do this to us? After all we've done for you? And what exactly have you done for me, Isla? I asked, my voice calm but cutting. You've charged me for medication I don't need, taken my social security checks, and still expected me to cook and clean for myself, while making me feel like an unwelcome guest in your home. Trevor stepped between us, hands raised in a soothing gesture. Let's all take a breath. Norma, maybe you should lie down for a bit. It's been a tough day. That did it. The suggestion that I needed rest, after being blindsided with a lawyer, was the final insult. I'm not a child, Trevor. And I'm not going to be manipulated or gaslit in this house another day. I turned and walked up the stairs to my room, my steps firm with resolve. I began packing what little I had there into a small suitcase. Most of my things were still either at my house or in storage. As I folded a cardigan, I heard a quiet knock at the door. Grandma? Kyle's voice was hesitant. Can I come in? Of course, sweetheart. He slipped inside and closed the door softly behind him. His eyes widened when he saw the half-packed suitcase. Are you leaving? Just for a little while, I said gently, not wanting to upset him. I'm going to stay with my friend Judith until things calm down. Kyle sat down on the edge of the bed, his long limbs folding in on themselves as worry clouded his face. I heard everything, about the lawyer and all that. He looked up, his expression full of concern. Mom's wrong about you, isn't she? About you being confused? She is, I said softly. He nodded, like it was what he'd expected to hear all along. Last night I heard them talking, about a lake house they want to buy. With your money. Mom said they deserve it after putting up with you for the last 2 years. The words stung, but they didn't shock me. I'd suspected as much. Thank you for being honest with me, Kyle. Suddenly, he dug into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled bunch of bills. I saved up some money from my summer job. It's only $87, but if you need it, you can have it. Tears stung my eyes. In that moment, my grandson, barely a teenager, had shown me more kindness and clarity than his mother had in years. I gently closed his hand around the cash. That's such a sweet thing to offer. But you hang on to it. I'll be okay. Will I still see you? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Even if you and Mom are fighting? I promise, I said, pulling him into a tight hug. Nothing could ever keep me away from you. After Kyle left, I called Judith and asked if I could stay with her for a few days. She agreed right away. When the taxi pulled up, I brought my suitcase downstairs, and found Isla waiting in the foyer, arms folded tightly across her chest. Where do you think you're going? She demanded. I'm going to stay with Judith for a bit, I replied, calmly setting down my suitcase. I think we could all use some space. So you're just running away instead of facing things like an adult? I nearly laughed at the irony. Isla, I'm not the one who tried to have her own mother declared incompetent instead of simply talking to her. Fine, she snapped, her voice cold and sharp. Go run to Judith. But don't come crawling back when you realize you can't handle being on your own. I looked at her steadily. I raised you alone after your father passed away. I've managed just fine before. I'll do it again. The days at Judith's condo were like balm on a wound. We caught up on life, laughed, and she introduced me to her circle of close-knit friends, strong, independent women in their 60s and 70s, each one thriving in their own way after retirement. One evening, as we shared a glass of wine on her balcony, I finally voiced what had been quietly gnawing at me. What if I can't manage on my own anymore? Judith gave a small laugh and shook her head. Norma, in the last 3 days you've reorganized my kitchen, figured out why my Wi-Fi was dropping, and cooked the best lasagna I've ever eaten. You're more capable than most 30-year-olds. The next morning, I met with Dr. Patel for a full neurological assessment. She tested everything: memory, reasoning, cognitive processing. When we were finished, she gave me a reassuring smile. Mrs. Wilson, your cognitive function is excellent. There's no medical reason you shouldn't make your own financial or personal decisions. Relief poured through me. Would you be willing to put that in writing for my attorney? Already done, she said, handing me a sealed envelope. I've outlined my evaluation and clearly stated that you are mentally competent in every regard. With that documentation in hand, I met with Judith's colleague, Martin Green, an attorney who specialized in elder law. After hearing everything, he drafted a formal letter to Isla and Mr. Donovan, making it crystal clear that any attempt at guardianship would be fought and defeated, using solid medical evidence. This should put a stop to any more legal maneuvering, Martin said, signing the letter. Now let's focus on protecting your assets once your home is sold. As I left Martin's office, my phone rang. It was Patricia, my real estate agent. Norma. Great news. You've got 3 offers, all over asking price. The top one's from a young couple who fell in love with your garden. They told me it was your roses that sold them on the place, she added warmly. They want to keep them just as they are. Something about that comforted me deeply. Knowing that the flowers I'd tended for so many years would bring joy to someone else made the decision feel right. I accepted their offer immediately. When I returned to Judith's condo, someone was already waiting. Trevor. I came alone, he said quickly, reading the hesitation on my face. Isla doesn't know I'm here. We sat down in Judith's sunlit living room. He looked older somehow, worn down. I owe you an apology, Norma, he began. I should have stopped Isla when she started planning to take over your finances. I should have spoken up about the attorney. I studied his face, looking for honesty. Why didn't you? He exhaled slowly. Because it was easier not to. Because, if I'm being honest, I thought we might benefit from that money too. He looked me square in the eye. It was wrong. I know that now. What changed? I asked quietly. He hesitated, then said. Kyle. He told us off after you left, Trevor admitted. Asked how we could treat his grandmother like an ATM instead of a human being. His voice wavered. Out of the mouths of babes, right? I felt a swell of pride. Kyle was a good kid, more compassionate than most adults in his life. He's a better person than we deserve, I said softly. Trevor hesitated, then continued. I came to tell you I support your decision to sell the house, and to warn you. Isla isn't taking this well. She's talking about trying to block the sale. She doesn't have any legal basis, I said, relieved to know Martin had already confirmed that. I know, Trevor nodded. But she's not being reasonable right now. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. Kyle misses you. he'd really like to visit, if that's all right. I'd love that, I said, smiling genuinely. After he left, I sat in thoughtful silence, reflecting on the unexpected allies who had shown up for me. Judith, with her steady friendship. Kyle, with his unfiltered honesty. And now, maybe Trevor, finding his conscience at last. I realized I wasn't facing this alone. And for the first time in years, I felt a genuine sense of hope for what lay ahead. 3 weeks after accepting the offer on my home, I stood in the now empty living room, the space where Isla had grown up, where Harold and I had shared our short but joyful marriage. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting golden beams through floating specks of dust. The house felt different now. Lighter. Like it had exhaled a breath it had been holding for decades. "You all right?" Judith asked, resting her hand on my arm. I nodded. "Just saying goodbye." We walked room by room, my footsteps echoing softly on the hardwood floors. In the master bedroom, I stopped at the window that overlooked the rose garden, now belonging to the young family who would be moving in next week. "They promised to care for the roses," I murmured, more to myself than to her. "I know," Judith said. "It's a good sign. They'll cherish what you built here." Downstairs, I handed Patricia my keys. She handed me a thick envelope in return. "Congratulations, Mrs. Wilson," she said warmly. "The funds have been transferred to your account. This is the final paperwork for your records." In the car, Judith glanced over at me. "Ready for what's next?" I took a long breath. More than ready. The next morning, I signed the lease on my new apartment at Silver Oaks, a community designed for active, independent seniors. This wasn't the clinical care home Isla had once threatened me with. This was a vibrant, welcoming place, filled with people my age who still lived on their own, but appreciated the safety and social connection that came with community living. My one-bedroom unit was on the second floor, with a cozy balcony that overlooked a flower-filled courtyard. The kitchen was small but modern, and the living room was bathed in natural light thanks to its big windows. It wasn't the house I had poured my life into, but it was exactly what I needed now. With Judith's help, I moved in the few essentials I'd kept in storage and picked out some new furniture. Kyle came over too, thrilled to help me set up my new television and walk me through the community Wi-Fi. "This place is awesome, Grandma," he said, glancing around with wide eyes. "Way better than Mom's guest room." I laughed as he stacked my books neatly on the shelf. "I think so too." Then he paused. "Has Mom seen it yet?" My smile faded. "No. She hasn't returned my calls." Kyle's face turned serious. "She's really upset about the house money. I heard her tell Dad that you owe them for taking care of you." I took a steady breath. "I paid your mother $1,200 a month to stay in her guest room," I reminded him gently. "And I cooked dinner most nights and did all my own laundry." "I know," he said quickly. "Dad tried to tell her that too." After Kyle left, I sat on the new sofa surrounded by unpacked boxes and let myself feel it for a moment: grief, anger, loss. Despite everything, Isla was still my daughter. The child I raised alone. The young woman whose graduation brought me to tears. How had we come to this painful distance? The phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. The number was unfamiliar. I answered. "Hello? Mrs. Wilson, this is Roger Kent from Sunnydale Retirement Village. Your daughter, EA, asked us to reach out about our assisted living options." A wave of disbelief swept through me. Even now, Isla was trying to force me, into a facility I didn't want and didn't need. "Mr. Kent," I said firmly. "Thank you for the call, but I'd just moved into an apartment at Silver Oaks. I'm not interested in assisted living." There was a pause. "Oh, I see. Your daughter mentioned you were struggling to live alone." "She's mistaken," I said flatly. "I'm doing just fine on my own, and my physician will confirm that." After hanging up, I sat fuming for several minutes. Then I called Martin Green and explained the situation. This qualifies as harassment, he said. I'll draft another letter making it crystal clear, any more interference in your housing decisions will come with legal consequences. The next day, I had my first visitor at Silver Oaks. Trevor. He stood in the doorway awkwardly, holding a small potted plant. Housewarming gift, he said, offering it with a sheepish smile. It's a peace lily, he said, handing me the plant. The guy at the nursery said they're almost impossible to kill. Thanks, I replied, accepting it and stepping aside to let him in. Want some coffee? He nodded, glancing around the apartment with open surprise. This is really nice. What? You thought I'd be living in squalor? I asked, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. Trevor looked sheepish. Honestly? I wasn't sure. Isa's been saying you're going to burn through your money and end up in some depressing place, but, he gestured around the room. This is nicer than our first apartment. I handed him a mug of coffee. That's because I'm not burning through my money. I've invested most of it. This place is cozy, affordable, and mine. We sat at the small dining table. The silence between us stretched, heavy with everything left unsaid. Finally, I broke it. Isa tried to force me into assisted living. Trevor sighed. Yeah. I told her not to, but she wouldn't hear it. She's convinced you need supervision. What I need is respect, I said, my voice firm. Something Isla seems unwilling, or maybe unable, to give. She's scared, he said quietly. When you sold the house, it felt like her safety net vanished. We've been counting on that money, for retirement, for emergencies, for Kyle's college. Without it, we're just. He trailed off, staring into his mug. Ordinary? I offered. Just regular people who have to live within their means, like everyone else? He nodded slowly. Yeah. And that terrifies her. She watched you struggle after her father died. I think she's always been afraid of ending up in that same place. For the first time, I felt a flicker of understanding. Isa had been 8 when Harold died. Old enough to feel the financial tension, but too young to grasp its source. Maybe the fear she carried from those years had twisted into a desperate obsession with control. I never wanted her to go through what I did, I said quietly. But that doesn't give her the right to take my security away. I know, Trevor said. I've tried to talk to her. She's just not ready to listen yet. As he stood to leave, he hesitated at the door. Kyle wants to stay over sometime. He really misses you. I'd love that, I said. He's always welcome. Over the next few weeks, I found my rhythm at Silver Oaks. I joined a book club that met in the community lounge, signed up for water aerobics at the pool, and made friends with Eleanor, my neighbor, a retired librarian with a wicked sense of humor. Kyle visited every weekend, sometimes spending the night on the pull-out sofa. Isa kept her distance. She ignored my messages and calls. I sent her a card with my new address and phone number, just in case, but got no reply. The silence stung, but I refused to let it overshadow the life I was building. A month after moving in, I received a letter from Martin. The retirement home stunt had been Isa's last attempt to interfere. Martin's warning letter had done its job, she'd backed off. That evening, I sat on my balcony, the sunset washing the sky in gold and lavender. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mom. Isa's voice was tight, clipped. I need to talk to you. It's important. I'm listening, I said carefully. Not over the phone. Can we meet tomorrow? There's a coffee place near you. The Brewing Pot? I know it. 11, she said, and hung up. No goodbye. I stared at the phone for a long moment, emotions colliding in my chest, hope and dread tangled like roots. Was this a peace offering? Or another attempt at control? Whatever she wanted, one thing was certain. I wasn't the same woman who had once sat quietly at her dinner table, humiliated and afraid. I was stronger now. I knew my worth, and my rights. I would listen. But I wouldn't compromise the freedom I had fought so hard to reclaim. As the stars blinked to life in the darkening sky, I made myself a promise. No matter what tomorrow brought, I would continue this new chapter. A life built on self-respect, not sacrifice. A life where I mattered, not because of what I could give, but simply for who I was. The next morning, the brewing pot buzzed with life, students, professionals, the smell of coffee and fresh pastries in the air. I found a quiet table in the back corner and ordered a chamomile tea. My stomach was too knotted for anything stronger. At exactly 11, the bell over the door chimed. Isla walked in. Tailored blazer. Pencil skirt. Hair pulled into a tight bun. She looked polished but worn down, dark circles under her eyes, tension bracketing her mouth. Our eyes met across the cafe. For a split second, I saw a flash of uncertainty in her gaze. Then she straightened her shoulders and approached my table. "Mom," she said stiffly, sitting across from me. "Hello, Isla," I said gently. "You look tired." She waved off my concern. "I'm fine, just swamped at work." The waitress came over, and Isla ordered a black coffee. We sat in tense silence until her cup arrived. "How's Kyle?" I asked, the stillness between us too heavy to bear. "He's doing well. Grades are good." She took a sip. "He misses you." "I miss him too. Though, he visits pretty often." Isa's mouth tightened. "Yes. Trevor told me." The silence that followed felt even heavier than before. "You said you needed to talk," I prompted, keeping my voice calm. She carefully set her cup down. "I need to ask you something. And I want the truth." "Go ahead." She inhaled deeply. "Did you sell the house because of what I said that night at dinner, about you being another mouth to feed?" I took a moment before responding. "That was part of it," I admitted. Hearing those words from you, it cut deep. But more than that, it made me realize you didn't see me as your mother anymore. You saw me as a burden. I paused. "And then I found out you were managing my medications, controlling my finances, and making plans for my house, plans that didn't include me." Isla flinched, her eyes dropping to her coffee. "How did you find out?" "Kyle overheard you and Trevor talking. Then I confirmed things with my pharmacy and doctor." She looked ashamed, shoulders sinking slightly. "So why did you want to meet today?" I asked softly. When she looked up, her eyes were glassy with tears. "We're losing the house, Mom." I stared at her, stunned. "What do you mean?" "We can't keep up with the mortgage. The bank's foreclosing. Turns out, we've been living beyond our means, just like you warned." Her voice trembled, laced with resentment. I sat back in my chair, still processing. "Isla, I'm sorry." "Are you?" she snapped, her tears sharp now. "Because if you hadn't sold your house, we could've." "Could've what?" I cut in. "Taken the money you were counting on to fix your problems?" "That was never going to happen, Isla. My home wasn't your backup plan." She angrily wiped at her cheeks. "You don't understand. We've got debts. The new car. Kyle's tuition. The renovations. We needed that money." "Those were your choices," I said gently. "Not mine. You always lived so small," she continued, her voice rising. "Coupons, second-hand clothes, no vacations. I swore I'd never live like that. I wanted more for Kyle than you gave me." The words stung, but I saw the fear behind them. "I lived that way because I had to, Isla," I said softly. "Your father died when you were 8. I was 35, a widow, with a child and a mortgage and a job that barely covered groceries." "I know that," she said quickly, defensive now. "Do you?" I asked. Because it sounds like you resent me for not giving you more. But I gave you everything I could, a safe home, an education, love, stability. Isa's tears welled up again. And now I'm going to lose my home. Kyle will have to change schools. It's all falling apart. A storm of emotion swept over me, grief, sympathy, frustration. A part of me wanted to pull out my checkbook, to fix it all. But I knew that doing so would only reinforce the same toxic cycle. So what are you asking me, Isa? I said gently. Do you want money to save your house? She didn't respond directly. You have all that money now, she said carefully. From selling your house. You don't need all of it. I do, I replied firmly. That money is my retirement. It's what allows me to live independently, without becoming dependent on anyone again. Her voice rose slightly, emotion leaking into it. So you're just going to let us lose everything? A few nearby patrons glanced over. I took a calming breath. I'm not giving you money for a house you can't afford, Isa. But that doesn't mean I won't help. She frowned, confused. What do you mean? You're in this situation because of financial missteps, not because I sold my house. Giving you cash would only mask the real issue. She started to speak, but I held up a hand. Let me finish. I won't bail you out, but I will help in practical, meaningful ways. I'll pay for Kyle's school directly, not through you, until he graduates. I'll also help you connect with a financial advisor to restructure your debts. And I'll help you find a more affordable place to live. Isa stared at me, the anger draining from her face, replaced by disbelief. You'd really do that? After everything? You're still my daughter, I said simply. I want to help you build stability, not depend on me like a crutch. She leaned back, visibly processing my words. What about Trevor? Have you talked to him? No. This is the first time I'm hearing about the foreclosure. Isa gave a small nod. He's been picking up extra shifts, trying to keep up with payments. He didn't want me to tell you, Isa said. Trevor thought we should handle it ourselves. He's not wrong, I replied. But there's a difference between asking for help to learn better financial habits and expecting someone else to fix everything for you. We stayed at the cafe for nearly 2 hours, going over what I could offer and what I couldn't. By the time we stepped outside, we had the beginnings of a plan. It wasn't what Isa had come hoping for, but it was something she could build on. As we stood on the sidewalk, about to part ways, Isa hesitated. Then, in a quiet voice, she asked, Can I see where you live now? Kyle says it's really nice. I blinked, touched by the request. I'd like that. My place at Silver Oaks was only a short drive. When we entered the building, I greeted a few neighbors by name. Eleanor, sitting with a book in the lounge, waved cheerfully. You've made friends, Isa noted as we rode the elevator. Yes, I said with a smile. It's a wonderful community. Inside the apartment, she looked around with surprise. It was modest, but warm, comfortable. Photos hung on the walls, Kyle's school pictures, Isa as a little girl, and one of Harold and me on our wedding day. It's cozy, she said at last. Not what I imagined. What did you imagine? She shrugged. Something clinical. Cold. Like a facility, not a home. Well, I said, this is home now. I've made it mine. Isa drifted toward the balcony. You even have plants. You always loved gardening. Just a few pots, I said. But the roses are doing well. She turned back to me, her expression shifting. I misjudged you, Mom. About a lot. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something. You were scared, I said gently. I know that fear. After your dad died, I spent years unsure how I'd pay the bills, how we'd make it. I remember that, she said quietly. I think that's why I've clung so tightly to money. I didn't want to feel powerless again. But in protecting yourself from one fear, I said, you created another. One that wasn't sustainable. Her eyes brimmed with tears. I'm sorry, Mom. For what I said at dinner. For how I acted. For trying to take control of your life. I stepped closer and took her hands. I forgive you, Isa. But things need to be different now. I need you to see me as a person, not just as your mom or a financial fallback. I'm trying, she said. It's not easy to change your thinking overnight. I know. But realizing there's a problem, that's where it starts. We talked a while longer. It was easier now, with the hardest words behind us. Before she left, Isa invited me to dinner the following weekend. Just family, she promised. No ambushes. No lawyers. 6 months later, I was sitting in the living room of Isa and Trevor's new home, a simple 3-bedroom rental in a quiet neighborhood near Kyle's school. They had downsized, sold the SUV, let go of luxury items, and started paying down their debts. The financial advisor I'd introduced them to had helped them lay the groundwork for rebuilding. Kyle sprawled on the carpet showing off his science project. Isa came in with a tray of coffee and cookies, her face more relaxed than I'd seen in years. Trevor, beside me on the couch, shared updates on his promotion. We're thinking about buying again in a few years, he said. Something smaller, but with a decent backyard. Isa wants to try gardening. I looked over at my daughter, who gave me a sheepish smile. Mom's been helping me. I've got tomatoes and herbs growing on the patio. She's actually really good at it, Kyle piped in. The tomatoes are awesome. I looked around the room, this new life they were building. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments where old patterns tried to creep in. But there was effort, growth, love. We were finding our way, all of us, through mutual respect rather than obligation. Later, as Isa walked me to my car, she paused. I'm glad you stood your ground, Mom, she said. I didn't understand it back then, but you were teaching me something important. What's that? She smiled softly. That loving someone doesn't mean controlling them. And that real family supports each other's independence, not just their own comfort. I squeezed her hand, too moved to speak. That night, back at my apartment, I sat on the balcony. The stars were starting to appear. My roses were in bloom, their scent filling the air. On my lap lay a photo album, not full of old memories, but of new ones. My neighbors at Silver Oaks. Kyle's visits. Isa tending to her potted herbs. The house I once called home was gone, sold to a young couple who would write their own story within its walls. But from its loss, I had built something else. A new life. One that belonged to me. And in that life, there was space for everyone I loved, even a daughter who was finally learning to see me not as someone to manage, but as a woman worthy of respect. It wasn't flawless. Real healing never is. But as I closed the album and inhaled the scent of roses, I knew one thing for certain. It was enough. Now I'm curious, what wow?